She put her hand on the glass, and so did I. That is what I remember. The moment our palms mirrored one another, divided only by the invisible barrier. And something in that impossibility ignited everything inside me. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. But there I was, standing across the lobby window of the gallery, staring at her silhouette framed by moonlight and neon. She moved like liquid in that dress, soft curves, slow steps, a kind of graceful defiance. I tilted my head, watched her lean forward, the glass catching the gleam of her eyes. And then, her fingertips pressed against the pane. My breath caught. I lifted my own and matched it. Attention. That little connection, just skin and glass, felt like an invitation. A question unasked. In that instant my heart hammered as though the glass might shatter. I could feel the faint coolness of the surface, the faint scent of her perfume drifting outward, brushing across my cheek. Everything slowed. Interest. Days earlier, I had walked into that gallery on a whim, telling myself I needed beauty, I needed art. I didn't expect to find desire. She stood by a canvas, abstract swirls of muted gold and deep blue, and watched the crowd. There was something in the way she studied the painting, as though she were reading some secret message no one else could see. When I walked past, our eyes locked. She tilted her head, half-smile tugging at one corner of her lips. I almost turned back, but I kept going. Then later, near closing, I returned, driven by impulse. The gallery emptied, lights dimmed, and there she was, across from me, bathed in soft amber. The glass wall separated us from a small rooftop terrace. She glanced over her shoulder, walked to the window, placing her hand against it. I wanted to reach through. I wanted to feel warmth on my other side. So I raised my hand too. 2 lives, 2 fingertips, one invisible line between them. Desire. My pulse roared. Time stretched. I felt the heat behind my ribs. For a moment, the glass felt insufficient. I swallowed, wanting to speak, wanting to move. She looked startled. Her eyes widened just a fraction, then softened. Her fingers shifted, pressing a little harder. They trembled. The space between us felt alive, electric. And then, she whispered, or at least her lips moved. I leaned closer, squinting. I couldn't hear. The hush of the gallery weighed heavy. My body ached to shift closer, but I resisted. What if I broke something, crossed a line? As I stood there frozen, she pulled her hand away, slowly, reluctantly, and walked toward the door just as a gallery employee flicked on overhead lights. The spell broke. She vanished behind a curtain of hallways and walls. My fingertips hovered against the nowhere she had just touched. The glass was cool, rigid, unyielding, and yet I sensed her warmth. I left the gallery in a daze, haunted by that moment. Who was she? Why did she speak only in silent magnetism? I stared at the note like it was alive. Meet me where the glass meets the sky. It didn't make sense at first, and yet it made perfect sense. I knew exactly where she meant. The rooftop, the one above the gallery, hidden behind a locked stairwell I had seen during my aimless wanderings that first night. A sky lounge, half forgotten. A space lined with windows and reflection. I'd seen it mentioned in an old Yelp review from years ago, now closed to the public. But not, apparently, to her. That night, I waited until the gallery emptied again, pretended to leave, then ducked back in, heart racing. The shadows felt thicker, the silence louder. I followed a stairwell that should have been locked, but wasn't. I climbed, and when I reached the top, the door was already open. A warm breeze hit my face, carrying with it the scent of jasmine and something floral, something soft and private. The rooftop stretched before me, scattered with forgotten patio chairs and art installations left to rust. The city hummed in the distance. Neon lights pulsed on nearby windows. And then, from the far corner, I saw her. She was standing by the glass railing, back turned, her silhouette painted by the skyline. Her hair was swept up messily, tendrils falling down her neck. Her dress shimmered, not glittering, but catching light the way skin does when it's touched. My throat tightened. I moved closer. She didn't turn around. I stopped just behind her, close enough to feel her presence, not close enough to break the moment. The tension stretched between us like the wind holding its breath. You came, she said softly, without turning. You asked, I replied. She turned her head just enough to look at me over her shoulder. Her eyes held something unreadable. Not surprise, not joy, something wilder. Something restrained. You followed a stranger to a rooftop in the middle of the night, she said. That's either reckless or brave. I stepped closer, just a breath away now. Maybe both. She turned to face me fully, and for the first time, I saw her without glass between us. Her lips parted slightly, not in speech, just the way someone does when they're about to lean into something they haven't decided on yet. What is this? I asked, barely above a whisper. I don't know, she said. But I didn't want to leave it at just that. Her eyes searched mine, and I felt the air tighten. She lifted her hand slowly, the same way she had to the glass before, but this time, it touched my chest. Lightly, as if testing reality. And God, I felt it. That one point of contact. A single palm over my heart, and everything inside me contracted. Her breath caught. She looked down at her hand, then up at me. I thought maybe I imagined the way you looked at me. You didn't, I said. And then she did something I'll never forget. She leaned in, forehead against mine. Not kissing, just close. Our lips, almost brushing, suspended in the tension of what might happen next. Her fingers splayed against my chest. I could feel the hesitation in her touch, like she wanted to let go but couldn't quite yet. Like this moment had rules, and she was just about to break them. Then she whispered, "Tell me what you want." I swallowed. My mind roared. What I wanted. Right now? Her. In every way. But I couldn't say that. So instead, I said, to not ruin this. She smiled. Soft. Sad. Then don't. Her fingers slid away. She turned toward the glass railing again, staring down at the city. And that's when I saw it. Her reflection in the glass. The curve of her body in silhouette. The tension in her shoulders. The distance between us, no longer marked by a wall, but something else. She was waiting for something. Cliffhanger. She pressed her palm to the glass railing again, as if recreating our moment. I moved behind her, mirrored her touch, and whispered, "Now what?" She smiled, but didn't answer. She didn't answer. Not with words. Her silence stretched like silk between us. Light, fragile, dangerous to pull too hard. But her body said everything. The way her shoulder rolled back, barely grazing mine. The way her breath caught when our hands met the glass. Reflections glowing faintly in the night. I stood behind her, close enough to feel her warmth bleed into the space between us, but still not touching. Not really. She was watching the city, or pretending to. I was watching her. The curve of her neck, the pulse fluttering beneath her skin, the rise and fall of her breath. She wasn't still. None of her was. She swayed slightly, like she was caught in some silent rhythm I hadn't been invited into yet. Then, softly, she whispered, "Have you ever wanted something you weren't allowed to touch?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She turned slowly, face inches from mine. The wind caught a strand of her hair and brushed it across my cheek. My instinct was to lift my hand, to tuck it behind her ear. But I didn't. Because the moment I touched her, really touched her, I knew everything would change. So instead, I asked, "Why me?" She tilted her head. "Because you looked at me like I wasn't just something to admire. You looked at me like I was already a memory." I didn't know what to do with that. The moment thickened. Her fingers hovered near mine, not touching, just breathing the same air. We stood in the afterglow of something not yet born, both afraid to move. And then she did. She stepped closer, until the heat between us was unbearable. Her dress brushed my thigh. Her scent was everywhere, faint jasmine, and something darker underneath, like wildflowers crushed underfoot. She leaned in, slowly, her lips brushing my cheek. Not kissing, just the softest graze, like a question with no punctuation. "You still haven't ruined it," she murmured, breath feathering across my jaw. My hands hovered at her waist, wanting to anchor myself, to draw her in. But I didn't. And then she did something even more dangerous. She took my hand, slid it along the edge of her hip, guided it with deliberate slowness, never breaking eye contact. Her breath shook. Her lips parted, just slightly. And then, she pulled away. Not far. Just enough. Just enough to leave me aching. I stood there, hands still half raised, heart pounding in my throat. She walked to the edge of the rooftop again, turning her back. And I knew this was the game. The slow unraveling. The wait. The echo of a touch not finished. She spoke again, quiet and almost amused. "Do you believe in timing?" "Yes," I said. "Then maybe this isn't ours." And still she didn't leave. She stood there, like a challenge written in cursive, waiting to be read the right way. I stepped closer again. My chest at her back. My voice low. Or maybe it is. Her fingers wrapped around mine like it wasn't the first time. But it was. It was the first time she held my hand not through glass or metaphor, but flesh and blood and breath. And that small, silent gesture, the way her hand trembled just slightly inside mine, felt louder than anything either of us could have said. I didn't move. Neither did she. We just stood there, joined by the quiet rebellion of contact. I studied the slope of her spine beneath the fabric, the way her shoulders relaxed as if my hand, my presence, was something she'd been waiting for longer than she'd admit. My thumb grazed the edge of hers, barely a movement, but it sent a shiver through her that I felt all the way up my arm. She let out a long, shaky breath, and I knew we were both already too far in. Her voice broke the silence. I shouldn't be here. I could say the same, I said, but you're still holding my hand, and you're not letting go. That made her smile. I could hear it in the way she breathed, even if I couldn't see it. She leaned back slightly, not quite into me, but enough. Enough to feel the warmth between us, to make my heart stutter. Then she said something I wasn't ready for. I'm engaged. The words dropped like pebbles into a still lake. Not loud, but undeniable. They rippled out, touching everything. I didn't speak. I couldn't. She still didn't turn around. I wasn't supposed to come here tonight, she continued, voice thinner now. I told myself I'd forget about that moment in the gallery, that it was just a spark, just something fleeting, but it didn't leave me. Neither did I. I keep thinking, she whispered. What if that glass hadn't been there? What if I'd reached out and you'd stepped closer? I finally moved, just a little, our bodies almost aligned now, breath sinking, hearts racing in some reckless, shared rhythm. Her voice dropped. Do you think some connections happen too late, or exactly when they're meant to? I could barely find my voice. Maybe both. She turned around then. Slowly, purposefully, our hands still entwined. Her eyes were wet, not crying, just filled with something too full to contain. You don't even know my name, she said. You didn't ask for mine either. She smiled through a nervous laugh. That's probably smart. Or dangerous, I said. She stepped closer. Our joined hands rested between us now, her fingers threading tighter into mine. Her forehead touched mine again, like it had on the rooftop before, but this time, it didn't feel like hesitation. It felt like surrender. Everything in me screamed to close the space, to lean in, to taste what had only been implied. But I didn't, because I could feel how fragile she was in that moment. And somehow, that made her feel even more powerful. We stood like that, connected and still, the city flickering around us, the night thick with choices we hadn't made yet. Then she whispered, if you kiss me, I don't think I'll be able to stop. I closed my eyes, jaw clenched, her breath dancing against my mouth. And I said, that makes two of us. The sound of the rooftop door opening felt like a crash. She flinched, her fingers tightening around mine instinctively, eyes wide with a flash of fear. Not terror, exactly, but the kind of fear that only comes when you've been caught in a moment you weren't supposed to have. I turned, shielding her with the smallest shift of my body, as if that would do anything, as if I could hide what we were, what this was. A figure stepped into the dim light, a man in a dark coat, his face half-shadowed. He paused, confused, squinting through the haze of rooftop air and city glow. Then I saw it, the way her breath caught, the flicker of recognition in her eyes. She knew him. He was tall, older than me by a few years maybe, and confident in that slow, practiced way that comes from habit, not passion. He took another step forward. Alyssa, her name, the one I hadn't known, the one she hadn't offered. She didn't move. His voice sharpened. What are you doing up here? She let go of my hand so quickly it felt like pain, like something vital had been cut. I needed air, she said. Her voice was too calm, too measured. He looked at me then, and I could feel his eyes sweeping over everything. The closeness, the silence, the static in the air. His jaw tensed. I've been looking for you, he said to her, not taking his eyes off me. She didn't respond. She just stepped slightly away, still between us, but no longer tethered. I thought you went home, she said, voice distant now. I came back for you, he replied. And in that one sentence, everything she hadn't said fell into place. Guilt, resignation, that quiet kind of loneliness that exists even when someone's standing right next to you. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. But her eyes, they never left mine. Not once. And something inside me, something primal and raw, twisted. Because I saw it. The longing, the ache, the war inside her. He turned toward the stairs. We should go. She nodded slowly, her fingers limp in his. But as they moved to leave, she brushed past me. Her shoulder grazed mine, and in that second, barely longer than a blink, she slipped something into my jacket pocket. She didn't stop walking, didn't turn around. She just followed him down the stairs, vanishing into the dark. I stood alone, heart racing, fingers trembling. I reached into my pocket. A key. Just a single silver key attached to a worn leather tag. And etched into it, almost too faint to see. 12 tomorrow. Midnight. The key burned in my palm. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, Alyssa, lit by moonlight, that trace of regret in her eyes, the tremble in her hand before she let go of mine. And now, this key, this message, this invitation. 12 tomorrow. Midnight. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a request. It was a challenge. I waited 23 hours and 47 minutes. I got to the building early, of course. Not even sure if I would go in. Not sure what kind of man I was becoming just by standing there. But I wasn't leaving. That much I knew. The place was old, tall brick, narrow windows, the kind of apartment building that whispered secrets from the walls. I stood at the entrance for too long, heart pounding as if the key might unlock something more than just a door. And when midnight came, I climbed the stairs to the 12th floor. 12A was at the very end of the hall. The light above the door flickered faintly, like even it wasn't sure what kind of story was waiting inside. I slid the key into the lock. It turned with a soft click. The door opened into darkness. No sound, no greeting. But I felt her. Not saw, felt. Somewhere inside that space, Alyssa was waiting. I stepped in and shut the door behind me. The room smelled like her. Warm skin, distant perfume, and something faintly floral. It wasn't a home. Not really. It was more like a curated escape. Velvet curtains, dim lighting, a record playing low and slow in the background, jazz, brushed drums, and breathy horns. Then I saw her. She was sitting on a low couch, one knee drawn under her, the other foot on the floor. She wore a dark robe, loose and slipping off one shoulder. Her hair was unpinned, cascading down like ink over bare skin. But it wasn't the robe, or the room, or the lighting. It was her eyes. Calm, certain, lit from within by something she had been denying for far too long. I didn't think you'd come, she said softly. You told me not to ruin it. Her smile was small, sad, and sharp all at once. I'm about to. That silenced us both. I stepped toward her slowly, like walking through water. She didn't move, just watched me. The record hissed and turned. When I stopped in front of her, I didn't touch her. Not yet. I'm not here for a mistake, I said. I'm here because I can't stop thinking about you. She looked down, lips pressed together. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. I don't know who I am when I'm with you. I reached out, slow enough for her to pull away. She didn't. My fingers brushed her jaw, traced down to her collarbone. Her breath stuttered. She leaned in. Our lips hovered. 1 inch. Half an inch. She was shaking. And then, she kissed me. Not softly. Not gently. But like someone who had finally decided to stop obeying all the rules she didn't write. She pulled me down with her, hands in my hair, body folding against mine like we'd done this before, in dreams, in lives, in locked rooms of the mind. It wasn't just want. It was need. She kissed me like she was burning through guilt. And I kissed her like I wanted to replace every regret she'd ever known. We barely spoke. Because everything else, every breath, every pull, every desperate moment of restraint, we saved for touch. Her voice was barely a breath. I shouldn't have let you in. But her fingers were still on me. Her lips still swollen from the kiss. Her robe still slipping off her shoulder, like even the fabric didn't want distance between us. The phone buzzed again, a quiet little scream in the silence. She didn't answer it. Instead, she sat up slowly, pulling away, robe gathering loosely around her like armor she didn't believe in. She stared at the phone, the glow of it painting her face in cold light. I didn't ask who it was. I already knew. She turned the screen over, face down on the table, and exhaled like she'd just pushed something heavy up a hill and let it roll back down. I can't do this, she said. But her eyes told another story. Her body told another story. I know, I said. Neither can I. We sat there, the space between us pulsing with what we hadn't finished, what we couldn't name, what we shouldn't want. Then, softly, deliberately, she asked, "Do you ever imagine things you'd never actually do?" I looked at her, really looked at her. The way her lips curved when she was scared. The way her knees drew in as if to contain the desire that threatened to spill everywhere. "I do now," I said. She smiled, crooked, dangerous, knowing. "Good." And then she stood, walked across the room, opened a drawer, pulled something out. A small notebook, bound in leather, tied with a ribbon that had clearly been undone too many times. She came back, placed it in my hands. "What is this?" "My confessions," she said. "Or fantasies. Sometimes I don't know the difference." I hesitated. "You want me to read this?" "I want you to understand it." She sat beside me again, knees touching mine, eyes burning into me. "I wrote most of those before I met you. And yet, some of them feel like they're about you." I opened the notebook, hands shaking. The pages were filled with ink and heat and want. Scenes of hidden touches, of long glances across crowded rooms, of elevators and hotel keys and risks taken at 2 a.m. And in the margins, scribbled small, guilt, regret, names crossed out. Words like "what if," "never again," almost. My mouth was dry. "You wrote these for him?" I asked, even though I wasn't sure if I wanted the answer. "No," she said. "I wrote them in spite of him." She leaned in then, her voice low, trembling, but fierce. "I've never done anything like this before. Never acted on it. Not until you." I looked down at the words on the page. The way the ink bled slightly at the edges. The way one phrase had been circled 3 times. He touched me like I was the thing he'd been warned about. I closed the notebook. She watched me. I didn't kiss her. I didn't say a word. I just pulled her into my arms, burying my face into the curve of her neck, breathing in all the fear and heat and hunger she couldn't say aloud. And she melted into me like she'd been waiting years for someone to hold her like that. Cliffhanger. But just when it felt like time had stopped, a soft knock echoed from the front door. 3 taps. Paused. 3 more. Her entire body went still. And she whispered, "That's him." 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. Her body locked in place, rigid in my arms. The warmth between us vanished like a pulled curtain. I could feel her pulse racing under her skin. Mine matched it. "That's him," she whispered again. "He knocks like that when he forgets his keys." I stood slowly, heart hammering, her notebook still in my hand. "What do you want me to do?" She looked at me like I was the answer to a question she didn't have the courage to ask. And then, just above a whisper, "Go. Please." Not angry. Not ashamed. Just undone. I nodded. I moved toward the back hallway, past dim sconces and velvet walls. She led me to a second exit. A service door near the kitchen, half forgotten, paint peeling around the hinges. Before I stepped out, she touched my arm. "Help me there. I need to go back to my life," she said, eyes full of storm and light. "At least for now." I looked at her, really looked, at the woman who had mirrored my hand through glass and set fire to my thoughts ever since. And I realized something. We were never meant to be permanent. We were meant to be felt, not held. I reached into my pocket, pressed the notebook back into her hands. "Don't stop writing," I said, "even if it's not about me." She blinked hard, nodded. I stepped out into the night, and as the door closed behind me, I felt the loss like a breath I couldn't finish. Weeks passed. No messages. No more rooftop notes. Just echoes. But sometimes I walk past the gallery where it started, and I swear, I can feel her there. A warmth behind the glass. A memory pressing back. I haven't seen her since. But sometimes, in the quietest moments, I still feel the ghost of her hand against mine. And I wonder if she still writes about me. If I became someone else's what if? If maybe we were never supposed to last, only to remind each other what it felt like to burn. Your turn. Have you ever had a moment like that? One that wasn't meant to last, but never really left you? Drop your story in the comments. I'll be reading. And if this made your heart race, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell. We're just getting started.